Hey guys, Hastings here, and welcome to another unlikely track car build. This time out we're going to be using the pretty darn massive Mercedes E63. Another big four-door saloony car, much in the same vein as the Rolls-Royce and the BMW M6 and the Audi RS7. And one thing about this car is its four-wheel drive system, which is the first four-wheel drive car we would normally have had. The other one we had was the Audi, but that I rear-wheel drive swapped that, and it actually turned out to be okay, a bit oversteery, but what do you expect with that amount of power that that car had. But I'm also going to swap this car to rear-wheel drive, simply because I've already done this, and I left it four-wheel drive, and it was just undrivable. It was so bad. It was like the worst car I've driven in A-Class in ever, probably. So yeah, I'm going to rear-wheel drive swap it to start with, and then we're going to go and stick on all the compulsory parts. Starting with the Forza Race Aero. Next up we have the racing tyre compound, and then following that we're going to go and have the gearing. And it was actually gearing, when I tried this in four-wheel drive, was probably the worst part of the car. It just didn't seem to want to be in the right gear ever. I don't know if just me not being able to get used to it, but it was. I just hope it's better now. And yeah, finally the last compulsory part we have is to put in the race roll cage. And while we're here, we're going to finish off doing all the handling upgrades, as it's quite a heavy car. So yeah, even with the full race weight reduction, it's always a mouthful, and I always mess that up. It goes down to 3,700 pounds, which is still relatively heavy. That's still 700 pounds heavier than the Dodge Charger we had last time, but it's not too bad. It's not as bad as it could have been. Finish off with the anti-roll bars, lower the springs, and then we just got to stick on the race brakes when that, there we go. That always seems to take a while sometimes, I don't really know why. And looking at the statistics, it's already looking better than, oh, that was loud. Yes, it's already looking better than the four-wheel drive version, especially with that handling stat. I'm going to stick on the clutch, drive line, and okay, if people could stop slamming doors in my flat, that would be fantastic. And finally, the mind blank race diff. Stick in the race diff. What else can we do? Let's go and stick on the full race tyre widths. There we go. That's going to help out a bit. Improve the launch, handling, etc., etc. Front tyres as well. Not massive tyres on this. 285s on the front. I didn't see what they were on the rear. What was it? 315s. That's not too bad. That's pretty big. It's nothing compared to the 345s on the General Lee last time out. How much power are we going to get into this car? Okay, that's a smidgen under 600 is what we reckon. Probably going to be up to about 700 by the time we're done. See if we can use all the parts we can to just reduce a little bit of weight as well. See if that makes much of a difference. Does that do anything? That makes it nice 1 pound lighter. It's always gonna make a huge amount of difference. I'm gonna stick the cams in. Okay, we can get some cams in. We'll do that. And then 3PI. I seem to remember the air filter puts it up a very small amount. Oh, yeah, makes it quite a bit lighter as well. Yeah, seems like my estimation was pretty much spot on. Gonna have around 700 horsepower. I didn't mean to click that. I want to go on the flywheel, and we'll stick in an extra £2 off. 900, not 900. Crikey, that would be ridiculously powerful. 691 horsepower, and I've just noticed that this has actually been quite a long build. So as we finally reach the end of it, that's nothing more to do. There's nothing more to do even. So that's finished the build of the car. I'll see you on track at Road Atlanta. As we come onto the first lap, I want to start with my first thoughts once I've done these laps, and that was probably changing this car to rear-wheel drive is the best thing I could have done. Like I say, I did go and do some four-wheel drive racing with it. That's how I initially built it, and it was god awful. It was like barely keeping up with the Rolls-Royce. It was that bad. Admittedly, I messed up on my first flying lap, but I'm prone to doing that with new cars. I've never driven this car before, so cut me some slack. But yeah, changing this to from four-wheel drive. There we go. I can get some words out. Is genuinely just, it changed this car so much, and I think it had more power with rear-wheel drive, but it just dealt with it like fine. It wasn't quite as stable as the Dodge Charger that we had last time out, but it just, like, you didn't feel like it was a rocket waiting to explode, like like the what was it, 770 horsepower Audi that we had. That was just spinning its wheels everywhere. This dealt with it very, very nicely, and it just seemed like a relatively pleasant car to drive. I'm still not sure what's going on with the gearing. It just seemed like it never wanted to be in the right gear when I wanted it to be. It's like I run manual with clutch gears, so I've got full control over when I'm using what gears and that. But just going through different corners and such, I felt like I should be in one gear, and the car's going, "No, I'm on the rev limiter, change up." And I thought, okay, that gear's a bit short then, so I need to remember to be in the next gear up. Then the next gear up, oh, that's really long. I've got no power. What the hell do I do? So, but apart from that, this car was, like I say, pleasant to drive. It's a very big wheelbase on this car, so it's very planted, very stable. Much like the BMW M6 actually, but I think this has got quite a bit more power, which is why it's just slightly more lively with the rear end. You can see me getting a little bit sideways through that corner there. And all in all, it was, I swear I always end up repeating myself in these episodes, but all in all, it was a relatively nice car to drive, and it wasn't, although as it was relatively nice, but it wasn't relatively nice to drive fast, because first few laps, you see me making a few little mistakes here and there, which is fine. So I was like, okay, I'll just ease off a bit. I'll just coast around a little, not coast, but I'll just ease off a little bit. I'll not push quite so much, and hopefully get a nice couple of clean laps in. And it was perfectly pleasant doing that. I think I did one lap. This is like drove around, and oh, this is quite nice. Saw the lap time at the end of it. It's like a 1:30. Oh, brilliant. So because I'd eased off a bit, I thought, well, I can just push harder. I'll get a few seconds down off that. But this car wasn't particularly fun to race round, as it were. It's, like I say, it was quite pleasant to just drive around, but trying to get a good lap time out of it, as you can see, it's not easy. First corner, you're going to run straight wide. It's got to be something to do with it, because the only problem I had with this car was the gearing. When I got the gears in the right places at the right times, it was actually quite fast. You'll see what time it did on the table and where it puts it on the table later. But like I say, I'm randomly drifting now because I got very out of shape through that section, and I'd already messed up the lap anyway. But yeah, it's just an absolutely baffling car, because it can be fast and quite easy to drive fast if you just get a little bit lucky, I guess. But then when you try and push it hard to replicate that time, it's just not going to work. You're going to end up in the wrong gear at the wrong time, or end up drifting around because you're putting too much power down, or just something will just go and it will just not work. But then once you go back to, okay, I'll just ease off a little bit then, drop a second or two a lap, and it's one of the easiest cars I've had to drive. It's just absolutely baffling to me. So, as we saw with the Dodge last time out, or after I'd done that actually, I was quite happy to go and tune that car and take off like 2.5 seconds. So, you never know, with a bit of tuning, this car might actually be half decent. But that's not the point of this series. I'd like to reiterate, I'm not going to tune any of these cars. It's just about looking for a good base car to see if there are any sort of hidden gems in the game. See if there are any cars that we can find that are unlikely to be considered as a normal track car, and see if we can turn it into one. Like the Dodge we had last week. Went top of the table. I really liked it to drive, so I went and put a tune in it. It turned out to be absolutely fantastic. So, yeah. I don't really know what I was going with that, but that's just the point I wanted to make. So I suppose we should now move on to how this car deals with specific parts of the track. The type of thing we talk about every single time. And it's a pretty good place to start. Quite sort of line this up quite nicely with the with the video that's going on. We'll start out with the straight line speed. Most cars probably know this by now, around the 170 to 180 mile an hour mark. with this car was 4-wheel drive, it was only doing about 165. It was easily the slowest we'd had. But with the extra bit of horsepower and converted it to rear-wheel drive, enabled this car to do about 175 miles an hour. I think it touched about 175, 176. So it was on par with the table-topping Dodge Charger. A few miles an hour quicker than the Lexus, a few miles an hour quicker than the BMW, slightly off the Audi RS7, but that thing just drifted everywhere and didn't know how to take a corner properly. So it's in the right sort of ballpark, and like I say, around the corners and that, it's very stable when you're not pushing too hard, and it's just generally okay. I think that's probably the best sort of summary of this car. It's okay. I wouldn't particularly want to race it. If I had an option, all of these cars have been a typical similar sort of style with the Beamer and the Audi and the Lexus. And what's the other one? Beamer, Audi, Lexus, Merc. Oh, the Rolls-Royce Race. That's the one. Now, the Rolls-Royce Wraith. They're all sort of these big, modern, luxury saloon cars. The exception maybe of the M6 a coupe. The Lexus is a little bit smaller, I guess, but they're all similar types of cars. So you could quite easily have like a saloon car championship featuring all of those cars. And this would probably be, well, out of those four, I'd say it's probably be the third one I'd pick. Although actually, saying that, I had a pretty crappy build on the Audi, so this would probably be one of the last cars I'd pick anyway. And the Lexus and the BMW were so much nicer. I'd say on a perfect lap, the Lexus is probably slightly quicker, but the Beamer was easier to drive. So it'd definitely be one of those two. And the Audi, if I hadn't been an idiot and put twin turbos in it, which giving it tons of wheel spin, it might have been slightly better. Anyway, I'm not supposed to be talking about them, I'm supposed to be talking about this car. Another point that I always talk about is the undulations, and it was fine over those, and end of story. And I'm actually slightly running out of time as I've just come across the track, come across the line to finish the last lap. As you can see, finish the lap and compulsory drifting attempt, because that's always good. Yes, using a bit of the handbrake, nearly spinning it round over the top of the hill, but just about sort of not doing a full 180 and going around the corner to park up in the nice cinematic camera position at the top of the hill for us to talk about the times. And this car was rather surprising. Like I said, with the 4-wheel drive, it was well off the pace. It was like barely keeping up with the Rolls-Royce at the bottom of the table. But with the build that's currently on it, it did a 1 minute 27.129. That was remarkably good. It's very close. It's within touching distance of the BMW, the Lexus, not far off the Charger. There's only 0.2 of a second separating the top 4 cars. That's really good. Although I have to say, out of those 4 cars, this is easily the hardest to drive, the least nice to drive, probably the ugliest in my opinion, and just generally the worst, least consistent. It was the hardest to get that time out of, like I said. And just generally not very good in general. I know I'm repeating myself once again. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. So as per usual, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you are new. Leave a comment. I'm really terrible in English. Oh my days. I need to learn to talk, I think. Yes, so where was I? Yeah, subscribe if you're new. Leave a like and a comment if you feel like it. That's what I was trying to say. So, but that's it for this episode. So until the next one, Hastings out. Goodbye.